Here's something that's strange. I had a dream about you last night. I visited you in your sleep and you'd gone bald. I can imagine that, you bald. Welcome to E equals MC Scared.
This one's all about out-of-body experiences.
Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night, you sit up out of bed, and you go for a wander. When you turn round, you see yourself lying there.
This might sound like something from a creepypasta, but it's a much more common occurrence than you might think.
Whether it's after just falling asleep or during something really traumatic, it can happen. But before we do that, each week we're going to be giving you a riddle. See if you can solve this one. I warn you, they get a little bit dark. A man locks his wife in a car to keep her safe while he goes in search of a petrol station after breaking down. He returns to the undamaged, still locked car. He finds his wife dead, and there's a stranger in the car. What happened? You have until the end of this episode to solve this problem.
Of all the accounts and stories over the years, a few stand out.
Take this story for example. This is a story about an American-born psychologist and parapsychologist who goes by the name of Dr. Charles Tart. One particular experiment that was carried out by the doctor was in a setting as such. It was just a normal room with nothing more than a bed for the subject, a door to get in and out of, a clock on the wall, below that a shelf, an electrical box that was hooked up to the patient so that the doctor could read the graphs from the electrical activity within there, and finally an observation window so that he could see what was going on. The idea of the experiment was to have the subject induce an out-of-body experience, or ABE. Up on the shelf there was a piece of paper that had a 5-digit number on it. In this case, the number was 25132. While she was asleep, there were some noticeable changes within the graphs. She had a little bit of irregularity. When the subject woke up, she was able to fluently recite the number that had been written on the piece of paper, which was at a certain height that even if she was standing on the bed, she wouldn't have been able to see it. Not only that, the observation window with the doctor on the other side can confirm the patient didn't stand to look at the numbers. Surely this can't be possible. Surely this can't be explained. I believe we can explain it with science. But before we do that, let's go and learn a few things with Dr. Christophe.
Various religions and cultures dating back thousands of years have documented cases of OBE, even back as far as ancient Egypt. The term out-of-body experience, or OBE, was coined by George N. Tyrrell in his book Apparitions in 1943. It was later used by researchers Celia Green and Robert Monroe in 1961. Many believe during OBE, the astral body and the physical body are never separated. They're joined by what is known as the silver cord. fact, in some cultures, OBE is regularly practiced, although it's known by different terms. These include astral projection or spirit walking. It's not uncommon for practitioners to use opiates to induce a trance-like state before astral projection. Keeping all of this in mind, the most important fact, OBE has never been 100% proven.
So, back to our story. This is how we believe this can be explained using science.
Let's take a look at our room again. There's one very, very important factor that we need to take a look at, and it's something that you'd probably never think about. It's the clock. Now the thing about clocks is most of the time they'll have a glass face, which means it's reflective. So if that number on the shelf is being reflected in the face of the clock, then there's a very high possibility that the subject would see the number without even realising it. The human mind can pick up around 1 billion pieces of information every second. However, it'll only process about 40 pieces. Everything else isn't needed, and we use our dreams to exhaust the information that our brain doesn't need to retain. And the fact that if the reflection of the number was picked up in the clock, it would be shown in reverse. Studies have shown that in people's dreams, everything, numbers, writing and everything else, has been seen in reverse. Therefore, a reflection which is reoccurring in a dream would show the right way round. And since the subject is already there for an experiment in out-of-body experience, then it's very likely that it's going to be something that they dream about. So could it be that this subject dreamt about the number that they saw in the clock in the room in which they lay and just remembered it? This is completely possible. Therefore, we cannot take this experiment as solid evidence of out-of-body experience. But that's not to say that it doesn't exist.
So we've come down to the Dolphin, which is Derby's oldest pub. It's a nice little scene to have a chat about a couple of stories that have been sent in to us, and here's one of them now.
I was lying in bed at the time watching television. Then it was like seeing myself in the bed, like I was looking down on myself and thinking, is this it? Have I died? I couldn't hear anything, couldn't hear the TV, but I remember a calm feeling. I didn't feel scared at all, and it lasted all of a few seconds. Then I was back in bed. I always thought I had nodded off and dreamt it, but never forgot it. Then about 10 years later I watched a documentary about it, about out-of-body experience, and it reminded me of what happened to me. I don't know if that was what I had, but it seemed very real at the time.
So, she said that she felt she was dead. She didn't know she was dead. What do you think about that?
Well, she was lying in bed watching TV. We've all fallen asleep watching TV in bed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's that thing about the I call it the twilight zone. You know, that part where you're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake. That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like when you get hypnagogic.
I don't know. It's a new word to me.
Hypnagogic hallucinations.
Right.
When you lie in sleep, you're really tired and you're hearing voices.
To be honest, yeah, something like that's happened to me before, where I've woken up and I've looked at my bedroom wall at the time and there's been like a screw sticking out of the wall, but it's not actually there. It's just me still dreaming. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, that kind of thing. So it could have been something like that.
Maybe so. But then also the whole dying thing, feeling calm.
The feeling that she was calm. I mean, if you thought you were awake and you saw that, you would obviously freak out.
I think I would a little bit, yeah. It'd be a bit odd. But then, yeah. So I mean, boring. Well, we don't really know. maybe it was just, you know, you were a little bit sleepy, and you know, hitting that. But wasn't there a fact about just before REM sleep?
Well, actually, yeah, the majority of cases for unplanned out-of-body experience is when someone is trying to fall asleep. They picture themselves in all different sort of locations. They can sometimes feel themselves coming out of their own body and going for a bit of a bimble. You think it could be dreams?
Yeah, just before REM sleep. I've heard about that. That's quite a common time. For anyone who
The
doesn't know,
reason being is because your brain is shutting down too quickly, shutting down quicker than your body can. So your brain starts to.
that's also why you get that little jump.
That's why you get the
Right.
jump, because your brain doesn't.
You must have had that when you're asleep and like you're lying in your bed and all of a sudden your entire body jumps like that. It feels like you're dropping and you have that dream where you're falling and stuff. That's what it's because of your mind shutting down faster than your body. Your body can't cope, so it just reflexes. There we go, you see.
Just to make sure you're not lying.
And for anyone who doesn't know, REM sleep is rapid eye movement. So every time you're dreaming, your eyes go all over the place, and it's known as REM sleep.
Because it does generally take about 3 hours to get into REM sleep.
It really take that long?
Well, supposedly you sleep in threes, so it's actually, they say it's more beneficial to sleep for 9 hours or for 6 hours rather than 8 hours, which is what is usually advised. They're wrong. It's an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half. There we go. It's here first. It's an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half.
Okay, so
An hour and a half
let's
to get into REM sleep and an hour and a half to come out of it. You go into REM sleep 2 or 3 times during your whole sleeping period.
unless someone sets off firecrackers like when you're asleep, then it's just instant awake.
And that is the worst time to be woken up.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at another story. This one's been sent in by Rob.
When I was a kid, no more than 5 years old, my mother was bathing my brother and I. She left the room for no more than a minute. My brother, as funny as it sounds, decided to put my head under the water and sit on me. I was terrified. All of a sudden it was like I was standing there watching it happen. I remember seeing my mum run up the stairs and stopping it, much to my relief. It wasn't for long, but I do remember it well. I could have been mistaken. After all, I was just a kid, and it was quite traumatic. But I don't think I am.
There we go. So on this occasion, slightly different. There's no sleep involved.
No, it could actually class that as a near-death experience, couldn't it?
I suppose so, yeah, because I mean, technically, well, he's going to be drowning or something.
Yeah, and if it wasn't, you know, the fact that he was drowning itself, definitely the panic of it would have caused something.
Possibly.
To click in his brain. Being a young lad as well, obviously he would have been really scared, I imagine.
Well, he also did mention to me that he couldn't solidly say definitely that this is what happened, but because obviously he was only 5 years old. It's like what, 35-ish years ago. Sorry if I've got your age wrong, Rob. We can't rule out the fact it could have been imagination. If you want something enough, then you know you might imagine it.
But then again, he saw his mum coming up the stairs, and of course you would expect that.
Yeah.
You know, you in the bath and you're drowned, you need your mum.
Yeah.
But it is a bit sort of, if he was that panicky about it, it was panic induced, he would probably fear the worst, and it wouldn't have his mum in it.
Yeah.
You know, because you drown and you feel pretty helpless and.
I mean, he didn't say anything. I mean, he spoke about absolute panic. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the time when they talk about, oh, I saw a tunnel, I saw my life flash before my eyes, none of that. All he said was he saw his mum walking up the stairs. So, yeah. Which actually kind of brings me on to my story. Here's my story. Okay, so this isn't something that I personally experienced. It was actually something that other people experienced. So I was running something called Hallow Walk, and this was a sort of horror walkthrough during Halloween. That had live actors and things like that. We'd built it, we'd written it all together and everything. On Halloween night itself, I was actually running a ghost walk around the Mickleover area in Derby, and all I could think about was I need to be at Halloween, you know, to make sure that everything's running smoothly, people are doing what they're supposed to do and everything. That's all I could think about. Now, the ghost walk started at 7 o'clock, okay, but when I got back there that evening at around 10:30, Danny, he's another lad that was running the ghost walk while I wasn't there, and he asked me what I was doing there earlier on. I said, well, I was putting the Halloween decorations up, and he said, no, this was about 7:30. I said, I wasn't here then, I was up at Mickleover doing the ghost walk. But him and another girl called Amy, they both said that they had seen me in the arena walking through, and after shouting me, apparently I completely ignored them. Now, obviously, this isn't something that I know of myself. I'm just basing it on what they've told me. They've both told me this, and like I said, the only link I can put to it is the fact that all I could think about while I was doing the ghost walk is I need to be at Halloween, right? But they claim they saw me. So, what is your thoughts on that?
That's pretty crazy, actually. You were fully conscious at the time. I assume you remember what you were doing while this was supposedly happening. So, the fact that 2 people saw it as well.
Independently.
Independently. That's baffling, really.
Really bizarre, isn't it? So I didn't know anything about it until obviously I got there. They've mentioned it, and I actually read a story a few months later. I kind of just shrugged it off, thinking you're mental. But not to say that anyone who has this is mental. That's not what I mean. But I later read a story that was very similar to what happened to me. And then I made the connection, and that I genuinely cannot explain it. Assuming they're being truthful, I cannot explain it.
Maybe that could be attributed to involuntary astral projection.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, some people actually induce trances in order to astral project, spirit walk. Maybe you were doing that because you were so focused.
Yeah,
you really
that's
should be
right.
concentrating on the ghost while you were running.
I suppose it should have been. Yeah. You're not wrong. I mean, it went well. Don't get me wrong. It's Halloween one. It's a special one and everything else. I put it down to them things like when people are in the Arctic or explorers, like really really cold. You hear the stories of where people imagine they're on like a desert island, sun beaming down to warm themselves up, and psychologically it works for them. So I mean, if your imagination is that deep, maybe you can project from that. But again, it's not something I know anything about. I didn't witness myself. It's not like a doppelganger or anything like that. We'll explain more on doppelgangers in another episode. I can't explain it.
I can't explain that either. I'm just assuming that the people weren't winding you up.
Hopefully. So that about does it for this episode of E=MC Scared. If you've ever experienced anything like this, we'd love to hear about it. Leave it in the comments below, and make sure that you join us next time for our episode on vampires.
Sweet dreams. This tree's got a face.
This one has a penis.